I would like to invite our first speaker, Charles, which is going to tell us about JRuby, which he's working on for 20 years already, and at the moment he's self-funding it. So big applause to Charles. Welcome.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Excellent. I'm very excited to be here for the first time at the conference and in the city. Unfortunately, I'm only here for about 40 hours this trip because I have to head to Ruby Kaigi right after this. But I'll be at the party tonight to answer questions. I got lots of stickers for JRuby for my company, Hedius Enterprises, which is now funding JRuby development. And let's get started. Get all my equipment here. Okay. So, professional grade Ruby. We'll find out what I mean by that here. Bit of information about me. So, I have been a full-time JRuby developer now for 20 years, since 2006. We were hired by Sun Microsystems. It was kind of at the very beginning of the Rails explosion. Everyone was really excited. We were working on JRuby, just trying to get it to run basic stuff. And one day, about now, 20 years ago, we managed to actually load up Rails and route our first request. And it was super exciting. Running Rails from this weird Ruby platform that nobody had ever used before that on top of the JVM. And so we got hired in by Sun Microsystems, and it's been a wild ride since then. So in that time, we had about 18 years or so of big companies that continued to sponsor us. In 2024, that finally came to an end. We were very happy for all the support that we got over the years. But now I am working to continue JRuby development by supporting folks like you that want these features, that want all of what I'm showing here. So if you're interested in this, definitely get in contact with me. Okay. So, JRuby. I have been working on and speaking about JRuby for 20 years. And the first question I always still get is, what is JRuby? I'm obviously not doing something right. I've done hundreds of talks all over the world, but there's still people who don't know. Let me see. How many people in here have ever built something with JRuby? Oh, that's always surprising to me. That's great. So put those hands back up for 1 second. Everybody that doesn't have a hand up, these are folks, you probably know one of them, that can tell you how their experience has gone and why they chose JRuby. But let's get into it now, and I'll explain it to everyone here. So, what is JRuby? Well, simply put, it's Ruby, but instead of the C Ruby, the standard Ruby runtime, it runs on top of the Java virtual machine. We focus very heavily on being a Ruby implementation first. We want the workflow to be the same. We want the tools to be the same. You're going to run all the same command lines. Almost everything that's pure Ruby, all the stuff that you run for Rails development should work the same on JRuby as it does with the regular Ruby implementation. But we also have lots of benefits from being on top of the JVM. That's what I want to talk about the most here today. We expect that Ruby code should just work, but maybe work a little bit better for certain sort of things. Okay, JRuby users worldwide, we have thousands of applications out there. There was a half dozen to a dozen folks in here that have built something with JRuby at some point. Production users since 2007. There were a lot of early adopters, and we love to see that. They were probably a little early to the game, but it was cool to have them as early adopters for us. I will showcase a few of these users. Some of these are customers, some of them are just cool use cases that I know about. But they will show a little bit of why they use JRuby and why they couldn't use Ruby otherwise in whatever project they're doing. Down at the bottom here, there's another smaller QR code. If you are a JRuby user currently, we have a users.md file in our repository, and we just like to keep track of who's doing what, so new users can pop by and say, that's an interesting use case, maybe that's what I need JRuby for. So to me, JRuby, it's a way of opening up lots of new opportunities to the Ruby community. And I think these days, with the competition of other languages, with all the AI stuff, we need opportunities. We need to be able to use Ruby in more places. So what's the problems with trying to get Ruby out there into these big organizations? Well, for some of them, the idea that there's this other language runtime, this other platform with these weird C extensions, it's just too much of a leap. They won't even consider it. They want something standard, something that they're used to, something that is tried and trusted. They're not going to put a new runtime into their stack right now. So sometimes there's libraries that are missing from the Ruby ecosystem. You can use JRuby and pull in anything that exists on the JVM and call it like it's regular Ruby code. There's a lot of users that I'll talk about here that demand true parallelism. They're handling hundreds or thousands of concurrent requests, processing many data files in parallel. Very difficult to do. You got to jump through a lot of hoops with regular Ruby. On JRuby, it just works. So I like to say that JRuby is enterprise ready. It's big business ready. It's anybody who's afraid of doing Ruby. It's ready for them and makes it much easier to get it into those organizations. So first off, this first problem, enterprise doesn't want to install Ruby. Well, the easy answer is JRuby. Anywhere that you can install Java, which is pretty much anywhere you can run a JVM, you can pull JRuby in and start writing Ruby and Rails applications. And that includes deploying on Java application servers. That includes sending a single file to someone that they've run java-jar and it's up and going. Very easy to get Ruby into these organizations. So here I have a JDK on my system, I think 26, the most recent one just released last month. So I have Java on my system. That's all that's needed. That's really the only thing you install there. We're going to use Ruby install to pull JRuby down. It just fetches the tarball, unpacks it. There's nothing to build, no build tools required other than having the JDK on your system. And here we are in IRB, just like we would with regular Ruby. We can check our Ruby version. The current version of JRuby supports Ruby 3.4.5 right now. We have a 4.0 version coming out hopefully next week. JRuby version you can see here is 10.05. We can now start actually calling into JVM classes. So here's the JavaLang runtime class. We'll get an instance of that. We've got our runtime class. We can call runtime available processors. And notice this is using an underscore here. We turn the Java case into Ruby case so it flows nice with the rest of your code. But you can use either. Runtime available processor says there's 10. That's on this system with 6 efficiency cores and 4 performance cores. And we can check free memory, and then we've got our free memory on the system. But we're just using any library that's on the JVM as if it was a Ruby class. And once you've imported it, pulled it in, you might never even realize it's Java. So compatibility, a brief note here. I did mention we've got Ruby 3.4 compatibility in the currently available releases. Some high number of 98% or 99% of the core Ruby specs pass. Stuff that's missing is stuff that just can't be done on the JVM, like forking and weird process management stuff. Pretty much nothing you're going to run into most of the time. JRuby 10.1, which will be out next week, fingers crossed, will support Ruby 4.0. There's not a whole lot of new features in Ruby 4.0, so it wasn't a huge leap, but there's a bunch of other cool optimizations coming along with that version as well. So deploying JRuby, you can do the standard Ruby thing if you want to just run with a server like Puma. Puma works great on JRuby. You basically just go into the configuration, change the number of workers to the number of threads, and you've got a fully parallel single process that'll run your entire site, usually with less memory than all the workers you would normally have to spin up. We can also package JRuby applications up as either an executable jar file, a Java archive, which you run with the Java command, or as a WAR file, a web application archive that you can deploy on any Java application server. These are probably the most popular ways that big customers use JRuby because they've already got Java infrastructure. They just want to use Ruby and deploy it alongside all the other stuff they've got. JRuby Rack is kind of the magic library that ties these things together. That bridges from the Java Servlet API to any Rack-based application. So we have people run Rails, we have people run Sinatra, Hanami, whatever, deploy it the same way on a Java server and you're ready to go. There's also a number of users who just use JRuby as a scripting language for a larger Java application. And that's another easy way to get Ruby into the system and start building stuff with it. First user I want to mention here, Quantum Inventions. It's a company out of Singapore. They use JRuby exactly like I just mentioned. They ship little jar file tools to their customers. All they have to do is run a simple command line and start it up or put it in a service somewhere. They ship web application archives, WAR files that get deployed on premises in the customer cloud. And because we have a way to ahead of time compile this code, you can actually obfuscate the whole application. And there's people who package and sell commercial software without worrying that the source code is going to be stolen. It's all in one executable archive. You sell it, they deploy it on their systems, and they're ready to go. So second problem to tackle, the C extension problem. I've run into this a lot of times. There's companies that really they're never going to have a set of C build tools on any server approaching production or even in their user acceptance. Trying to get them to have tools available to build C extensions and to deal with all of these other libraries that are getting pulled in, it just doesn't happen. Well, with JRuby, there's no build tools necessary. All of the extensions that we ship are pre-compiled regular Java bytecode. They all optimize and inline just like any other piece of code on the VM, and nobody has to worry about these security issues of having C and build tools on the target systems. Okay, so it's a JVM language. We fit right into the JVM just like any other language, just like Java or Scala or Clojure. Extensions are written in Java, not in secure C code. And because we all live within the same JVM as the same language, we get the benefit of the JVM garbage collector. The GCs on the JVM are never going to be your problem. They're never going to cause the pauses that you might see in the CRuby world. And people deploy JRuby applications that have hundreds, thousands of gigabytes, terabytes of data in a single process, and the GC doesn't care. It works just fine. You can have huge applications on JRuby that would be almost impossible with the regular Ruby implementation. So a little walkthrough of the JRuby architecture here, how we fit into the JVM. So we have our Ruby code come in on the left. We parse and compile that into our own intermediate representation, our own bytecode basically. And then we have an interpreter for the bytecode, and we interpret that code for some amount of time until we decide that it's important enough or hot enough to do the next step. That next step, we turn that Ruby bytecode into JVM bytecode. Then the JVM just basically takes it from there. It runs this code, profiles it, optimizes it, and eventually turns your Ruby code into optimized native code. So I think I got the first version of the JIT compiler done in 2008, and that was by far the first native JIT for Ruby in the world. Still working great and optimizes really well. So in a couple examples here, one of the big optimizations that came in Ruby 4.0 was improving the performance of constructing new objects. So object.new, myclass.new, whatever. The problem in CRuby is that anytime there's a piece of C code that it has to call, the Ruby code and the JIT for it, YJIT, cannot optimize across that C boundary. That's a hard boundary for optimization, and so most of the things that we want from performance don't get optimized into the system. What they did is they added a new instruction that if it's a standard object construction, then the JIT knows about it, it can optimize it a little bit better. They know that C extensions are a problem for performance. But JRuby, of course, it's all Java, it's all on the JVM, so whether we call to Java or we call to Ruby code, it's going to inline and optimize just great. Let's take a look at a simple example here. Just constructing object.new as fast as we can. How many can we do? Here are the numbers for Ruby 3.4 with YJIT. This is before that optimization came in. About 10.3 million objects per second. So this is kind of the max throughput of your system. Simplest possible object, how many you can do per second. With that opt-new optimization, around 30% improvement. So definitely a big help when just trying to crank through objects, and Ruby is an object-heavy platform for sure. Lots of objects being created, lots of garbage to clean up. But then we look at JRuby on any standard JVM, and it kind of changes the whole scale of this thing. The JVM is so efficient at optimizing object allocation, making it not become a GC problem if these are short-lived objects. We're orders of magnitude more performance on this sort of thing. And this cascades to arrays, hashes, everything that you're doing in a Ruby application. The JVM is going to be able to keep up with much higher throughput, much more allocation than the standard runtime can. Something a little bit less synthetic, this is there's a script that generates a very simple Mandelbrot bitmap. And here again, JRuby, just by the nature of being on the JVM and having that native JIT, the performance is better than twice what it is in CRuby, even with their native JIT. The JVM's got a lot more years in it, a lot more performance, and we generally can beat CRuby on any benchmark. Interesting to note, there are actually other JIT compilers for the JVM. One of them is the Graal JIT. You might have heard of Graal VM. If you plug this benchmark into the Graal VM, it gets even faster. Graal actually can eliminate a whole bunch of temporary objects, and now we're twice as fast as JRuby on a standard JDK. Just by switching configuration, switching what JVM you use, your performance can actually go up. So user focus here, Poshmark is a big e-commerce site for both new and used products. They use JRuby because of this high performance, because they have things like flash sales, they have huge amounts of traffic coming through, and they need throughput to be solid, latency to be as low as possible, and it's the only way they can handle these thousands, tens of thousands of concurrent users and get the performance that they need. All right, so the libraries. Sometimes we want to use a new feature, or there's a library in the Ruby world that just doesn't implement things well. That's generally not a problem on JRuby. If there's something you want to do, there's probably 5 or 6 Java libraries out there that do it, and maybe like 2 of them are really good. So you can pull any of these libraries into JRuby and have all of that functionality available. Hundreds of thousands of libraries out in Maven Central, and then there's other repositories as well. Probably the biggest collection of utilities and libraries out there for almost any language platform. Very easy to pull these libraries into Ruby code. Let's go right to a little example here. There's a QR code. This is to a blog post I wrote recently showing how to use a library called JFreeChart. It's been around almost as long as JRuby, but it's a very solid library for generating charts and graphs in various formats. First of all, what we have in JRuby is something called jar file, which is sort of like a gem file for bundler, but you specify the namespace and coordinates and version of what libraries you want to use. Here I'm pulling in some libraries from JFreeChart. You run the lock jars tool that we ship with JRuby, which is basically like bundle install. It'll pull those libraries down, put them in a standard location on your system, and now you have those available. No build tools, no C build required. It's just on your system. Here we're going to import a few of the classes from those libraries. So we're pulling in the standard category data set, 3D, and a keyed values, basically a store for the values we're going to put into this chart. We pull in JSON, and then this is just the standard JSON library with the standard file.read. We read our JSON data in, we parse it, and then we build up this standard category 3D data set that we're going to populate for our 3D graph. Do a little bit of tweaking here, add some titles to it, add some headers and so on, adjust the colors, change where we've got the legend for this whole thing. Then we can generate a PNG from this. And with practically no configuration, no customization, we've got this for free. Not the prettiest chart in the world. There's work that we can do to clean this up, but that was all maybe 10 lines of code, no C libraries to pull in, no libraries required to be installed on the system, and you've got a full charting library. There's also backends for this with the exact same code. You can dump out SVG, you can dump out PDFs as well, and there's a couple other formats, but it's all the same code and it works fine in JRuby. Some of you might have done the Glimmer workshop here, the Glimmer web workshop. Glimmer There he is. Glimmer also supports building desktop GUI applications, and the JRuby plus SWT option is a really easy way to build portable graphical interface applications. Again, package it up as a jar file, send it to a customer, they run it, they've got a full graphical console on their system without installing anything else. It's really amazing. We also have in the past supported a set of Android APIs called Rubato. These are a little bit rotted at this point, but we're willing to work with somebody to update them. This is a demo application, Rubato IRB. Basically gives you a little IRB console and a very simple editor within an application on your Android phone. You can try out Ruby stuff, you can type in code and run it. Just needs a little bit of updating and we can get this back out there. So if you're interested in building Ruby applications for Android, just let us know. So the user focus I want to have here is Kami. They are a tool for education used around the world, millions of students and teachers. Basically, teachers post homework, the kids go in and they can do their edits, they can fill in the worksheets, send it back to the teacher, teacher grades it, teacher marks it up, and so on. But this application, it's a standard Rails app in the front end, but all of the heavy lifting is done by a back-end JRuby service. It uses PDF libraries on the JVM, which are fast and standards compliant. They process millions and millions of PDFs through this thing a day, and it works great. They could not be handling this load if they didn't have JRuby available. So, big data and high concurrency. This is where we start to scale up and have problems with some of the systems we use with regular Ruby. JVM is really just designed for this. And I would even say if you have a tiny app and JRuby works well for you, stick with it. But when you need us, the JRuby platform, the JVM is here to help take it up to that next level. So I mentioned the garbage collectors, world-class GCs, the best garbage collectors in the world. Many of these can be configured to be literally pauseless. You trade a little bit of throughput for 0 pause times in your application. Not something that the standard Ruby can even get close to doing. GC is probably never going to be your problem. I've run huge amounts of data through JRuby, running with hundreds of threads, creating a tremendous amount of garbage. GC never even bats an eye at it. We get some nice tools for monitoring this stuff too. This is called Visual VM. It's a standard open source tool for the JVM. What you're seeing here on the left is some basic stats, how many threads are running, how much overall heap size there is. On the right is actually a live view of the garbage collector. So you can monitor your application locally or in production over secure socket and see whether the heap is growing, whether we've got that nice sawtooth that keeps collecting, or whether things are leaking over time. And then from there, you can pull off things like heap dumps. You can look for memory problems, and really an amazing set of tools, and this is just the beginning. So on the concurrency side, this is something that there's been a lot of work recently in the Ruby world, trying to do concurrent execution of code, concurrent running of Ruby stuff. Prior to the introduction of the Ractor API, pretty much impossible to get concurrency in a single Ruby process. You need to spin up workers and you need to coordinate between them somehow. With JRuby, it's trivial to do this. You can use multiple threads, you can use shared data in the same process, and fully parallelize, fully get the use of all of the cores on your system. So I made a little demo example here. This is basically just trying to process JSON as fast as possible. So we've got, say, hundreds of JSON files. In this case, we're reparsing one giant 1 megabyte JSON file that came from somewhere. But you can imagine if we've got these coming in from all sorts of requests, we need to be able to handle these in parallel and move quickly with them. Here is a version that uses threads. So instead of doing 100 parses in one thread, we're going to do 10 on each and split that work up between the threads. And it's really that easy to get the use of all the cores in my system. Spin up 10 threads, have them each do a piece of the work, and you get full use of the system. This is roughly the equivalent for JRuby right now. You use a Ractor to do this. There's a lot of details missing here, like you would need to make that data Ractor safe when you pass it back to the rest of the system. You can't interact with anything that's mutable from the main system. A lot of hoops that you have to jump through, but you can get parallelization a little bit better with Ractors now. So I'm excited to see this coming along, and it means people are going to be doing a lot more interesting thread-safe code too. So let's compare these. So we've got JRuby with threads on the left, basically not really getting any extra usage out of the 10 cores that I have in my system. It's kind of spread out across those cores, but each one's only using a tiny bit of what the CPU can do. So in this case, it was about a 1.6 times improvement. That's probably because the actual JSON parsing can sort of get parallelized. Ractors are definitely helping here. So here, with the 4 performance cores, 10 efficiency cores, I get about a 3.7 times improvement by using 10 Ractors. So this is certainly a big improvement over what we had in standard Ruby in the past. But then, of course, JRuby, we're maxing out all of the cores. Those 6 efficiency cores translate to about another 2 performance cores, get about 6 times performance on my system. But I could throw 50 cores, I could throw 100 cores at this, max them all out, and the Ractors would still be just kind of ticking up a little bit. Very easy to get fully parallel code running anything on JRuby. So how many people have used Logstash before? Logstash actually has been a JRuby app for pretty much its entire lifespan. This is a centralized log aggregation tool that you deploy on one server, and all of the logs from all of your applications get dumped into this and managed and distributed. Clearly, lots of parallel use there, lots of requests coming in from all over your enterprise. Logstash could not be what it is today without JRuby and being able to handle this stuff massively parallel across the whole system. Another one that takes big advantage of this, Substitute Alert is an application used in the United States for distributing substitute teacher requests. Teachers out sick, anybody that's available that day can get a notification saying we've got a substitute slot open. So that's sending out hundreds or thousands of requests all at the same time, responding to their yes or no, whether they can take that job. All scales really well, and they've been a great customer for us, and we work very closely with them to keep improving JRuby and making sure it works for their application. This is a fun quote I got recently from someone, a new user that just started using JRuby about 2 months ago. JRuby is excellent. I don't even code for MRI anymore, and I don't miss it. They're getting better performance, better scaling, and the entire set of features on top of this platform. So let's talk a little bit about JRuby futures here. 10.1 and beyond. I mentioned that we've got 10.1 coming out. We're very excited about this. There's a bunch of new optimizations. We've managed to shrink the size of objects. We've managed to improve the number of places where it inlines and optimizes code well for us. We're also taking more advantage of a whole bunch of new JVM features. There's features that can pre-optimize your code, so once you go into production, it's already warm, it's already running fast. There's a feature called Lilliput that shrinks objects even more in memory. JRuby's objects are actually down about half the size of the objects in CRuby in memory. And I was amazed. I ran a test yesterday where I basically just create 10 million objects and hold them in memory. And for the first time, the JVM running JRuby had a smaller process size than CRuby. I was blown away. So yes, upgrade your JVM and you get these features for free, but we're continuing to integrate them and make it automatic that you get the best out of whatever level of JDK you're on. So a final problem, maybe this sounds cool. Maybe you want to start playing with this. Maybe you don't know how to get started with JRuby. Well, obviously my company can help with this. I've been working on JRuby for 20 years. I can handle anything that you want to throw at it. So please, if you're interested, get in contact with us. We can help you do some trials for your applications, help you do new application work. New development, migration of existing apps to JRuby. If you're already running JRuby and you don't know how to upgrade it, we can help with that too. This is how JRuby development is funded today. I got a little bit of GitHub sponsors, and that like buys a couple beers for me a month. But this is where the rubber hits the road. So if this is interesting to you and you think it might help your company, please get in touch. Other than that, I am here for free questions, and you can ask me whatever you like. I've got a bunch of JRuby stickers and Hedia stickers down here for anybody who wants them during the break. I think we have time for some questions. Is that correct? Excellent. So let's get to that right over here.
I have how to switch it on.
Maestro?
1, 2, 3.
You're the first one. So.
Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Hey. Hello. Thank you for speech. It was very interesting. Really short question. What is bad about JRuby?
If I had a 45-minute talk, I would have put that one in. So the other question that I get after I tell people what JRuby is, the next question is, well, why isn't everyone using this? And I'm like, well, yeah, it does all of this stuff. Why doesn't everyone use it? There are 2 or 3 things that people run into. Number one, and this is improving every day and it's much better now, startup time. The JVM is not known for getting up and going fast. So say 5, 10 years ago, JRuby running a rake task where CRuby would take 500 milliseconds to a second, JRuby would be like 4 or 5 seconds to do it. It's just enough to throw off your flow, and people get really annoyed, especially if you're doing lots of rake tasks, lots of Rails commands, iterative development on a command line. It gets in the way. That's much better now. JRuby's probably going to be in the 1 to 1.5 seconds for a big rake task or something that loads a lot of Ruby gems. Our baseline startup is well under a second, probably down to 400 milliseconds. So that's kind of going away, but that's one of the first things. The other one that people run into, we do not support all of those C extensions that are out there. In most cases that are big, important libraries like Anokogiri, like JSON, like Psych for YAML, we have our own JRuby version that will install automatically when you get the gem. But we still find lots of little C extensions all over the world that need a JRuby version. Sometimes we can point you to a JVM library that does the same thing, and then it's just a matter of changing your API calls a little bit. Other times we'll work with those authors to get a JRuby version that works. But that's probably the next thing that most people trip on. Other than that, it's once you get it up and going, if you can take your application and bundle it, it's probably just gonna work. Like almost all of it should just work. It's getting past the concerns about startup time, and we have various ways to mitigate it, and any libraries that are missing support for JRuby. Sure.
Any other questions?
Hi, thank you for the talk. I might catch you later for a more elaborate answer, but just in layman terms, what's the difference between JRuby, especially on GraalVM, and TruffleRuby?
Okay, difference between JRuby and TruffleRuby. TruffleRuby is another implementation. It's not really a JVM version of Ruby. It kind of only runs on GraalVM, and it depends very heavily on GraalVM to have any sort of performance at all. They have taken a very different approach. They are trying to support C extensions. They are trying to be absolute blazing fast performance on small things, on fast little benchmarks. We have focused more on being a whole ecosystem, a whole platform, pulling in JVM libraries, making it easy to deploy. We've just kind of had different goals. As far as I know, JRuby still has way more deployments out there. We are probably the most popular, really the only alternative Ruby with huge scales and large applications that have been deployed out there. TruffleRuby, also some of the stuff I talked about with us being smaller and more compact in memory. Generally, TruffleRuby is going to use a lot more memory because of the way they optimize, because of the way the system's designed. And the startup time also tends to be a big problem for them. They haven't really solved that issue.
Any other questions?
Thank you. Can you reliably run a Rails application on JRuby?
Yes, you can. And there's actually a bunch of users out there, hundreds, thousands, I don't know. We only hear from them when we break something. So like I probably didn't even know about any of these applications in the room. Rails, for sure, is a big use case for us. You can take a Rails application. Rails itself has done a lot of work over the years to be thread safe. The one catch right now, we still don't quite have database adapters for 8.0 and 8.1 out, but that's almost ready and almost done. I actually did the MCP workshop, and I followed along the whole thing just using a little bit older version of Rails, generated the scaffolds, hooked up the MCP stuff, and it all worked just exactly like it would in JRuby, modulo a few little configuration changes. So yeah, definitely Rails works well. If you want to see some super high performance, there are people who have taken little Sinatra applications with like the SQL database library, handling like 10,000 concurrent requests, hundreds of thousands of stuff per second, huge amounts of scale on that. So all the way from little service level applications up to full Rails apps works great.
We got time for one more question.
Can you, before Sunday, help me change my Ractor talk to use JRuby?
So you're speaking Sunday. Yeah.
Okay, that's not the question. No, the real question is, so with Rails and like deploying to a platform like a Heroku or a Railway or something like that, what is that like? Is that any more significant in terms of getting it up and running on that kind of a platform?
I don't know about all of them. I know Heroku, every time we do a release, they put out the JRuby build pack that works fine, just like it does with regular Ruby, and it's all there and works well. Any of these cloud services that have support for deploying Java applications, obviously they can deploy JRuby apps very easily. Really, because the command line and the whole workflow for JRuby development is pretty much the same, any of these can easily support it. It's just a matter of probably providing a configuration file that does Ruby install JRuby instead of Ruby install 4.0 or whatever. There's really not that much difference.
And then you said the adapters for 8.0 and 8.1 aren't there yet, but soon?
Yeah, so there are a couple folks that really needed them. They've told me that they are just running from gems they built off master, and they're working fine. I think the main reason we haven't released is because we have a high bar for passing all of the active record tests, or as many of them as we can, and we're not quite where we wanted to be for a release yet.
Thank you.
Sure. And I think that's it. We've got a little break before the next talk. Thank you very much. Come get some stickers.
Thank you.